Okay. Hi, I'm Jiwon. In the days leading up to the mission trip, I felt that I had not prepared as much as I should have through prayer. Preparing my heart and praying for those who we would meet through prayer was not a daily thing. Sometimes I remembered to pray, and I would pray for it during EMP, but I'm definitely no prayer warrior. This was made even more evident to me throughout the mission trip. While this is my third time going to the villages, my assigned ministries were a lot different from the previous two. Before, I had led VBS Praise and had a lot of time to spend with the children, playing with them and building relationships. This year, I was placed in more supporting roles, such as translator for the medical team, videographer, and tech personnel. Even now, a part of me wishes that I had more time to play with the children. In Santa Barbara especially, many of the kids and younger adults on our team were shedding tears because the time spent there was so short. They had, in that short time, built relationships with the children and shed tears as the kids asked them if they were going already. For me, who remained at the medical table handing out medication and vitamins to the older adults, I left that village with only regret that I couldn't have had the same time with the children. Why? Heart of stone, okay. Despite this regret, I do feel like I realized that God grants us blessings and different types of insights depending on our ministry. I felt like I could relate a little more with the adults who had different, more supporting roles, such as cooking, medical team, and construction team. They do not get to partake in VBS ministry, but despite this, God finds a way to make each reflect and understand his heart for the people in Mexico through every single ministry. Through my ministries, I felt that God was telling me that I needed to become a person who, before all things, prays. Just as Jean mentioned last week, as the medical team and a couple of other people were driving to where Amelia was staying, Pastor Chu told us to be prepared for a spiritual battle. We weren't going in as the medical team, but as prayer warriors. At that moment, I felt so ashamed. I felt like I was the least qualified on the team to be praying for this woman who is so severely sick. Not only did I feel helpless because we had no means to help her medically, but I knew at that moment that I was not the prayer warrior that Pastor Chu was asking for. I thought, wouldn't it have been better if Pastor Daniel came in my place or one of the deacons? When we got to her house, we prayed fervently with tears. I was given the opportunity, along with the rest of the medical team, to visit her all the 3 times we visited her. Each time we prayed fervently, but I couldn't help thinking, could I continue praying for her just as one of the deacons or Pastor Daniel would? Or would I forget to pray, just as I had done many times in the past once I returned to my life here in Dallas? The same exact thoughts popped into my head when we met Marcos in Santa Barbara, the 5-year-old boy who suffered from congenital heart and lung problems. It felt like God was asking me if I could be a prayer warrior for them, if I would pray with the same fervency and the same diligence as I was in Mexico. Even if I could see no change from the prayer, could I still continue to be faithful in praying? Lastly, I want to share about my experience in house church. I went along with Pastor Daniel, who wanted to visit the house church who was suffering the most, to provide encouragement and prayer, of course, like Pastor Daniel is. So Pastor Daniel, Kathleen, and I visited the Peru house church led by Shepherd Julia. Shepherd Julia had already lost 2 of her 5 children, and her one other member had I can't read it either. Okay. Shepherd Julia had already lost 2 of her 5 children, and her one other member had lost her son as well. Both widows, they leaned on each other for support. Julia lives currently with her 9-year-old grandson, Daniel, or Danny. Danny was the son of the daughter that she had lost, and because his father was unwilling to support him, he lived with Julia. Julia struggled daily to make ends meet financially. In Mexico, students need to pay to take each exam or quiz. When they can't afford it, the teacher refuses to teach them. So when they do not have any money, Julia and Danny go out into the streets to sell the little the De La Rosa marzipan candies to pay for his school. During house church, she showed us a video of Danny smiling brightly as he sat on the side of the street selling candy. Despite all this heartache, Julia continues to be a faithful shepherd. For the 6 years that she has been a shepherd, she continues to pray fervently for others to come to know the Jesus Christ who grants her peace from all of her worries. Though she can barely afford it, she welcomed us warmly and prepared a big meal for us visitors, continuously asking us if we wanted more. When we sang praise, she sang with her eyes closed, joyful tears running down her face. Here was a woman of God who loved God so passionately that even despite the harshest of tribulations, she did not sway, but rather leaned on God for strength. In front of them, I again felt ashamed. The smallest of issues, and I'm ready to skip house church, the smallest of hardships, and I turn from God, and the smallest of distractions, and I forget to pray. I feel like God has tasked me to pray for those I have met through this trip. Amelia, Marcos, Julia, and Danny, among the many, each are in very different situations, but all need the same power of prayer. I felt like God asked me to trust him fully, something I don't always do. I tend to rely on my own skills and abilities before relying on prayer. The helplessness I felt made me realize that only God has the power to help them, and all I can do is become a faithful prayer warrior that believes wholeheartedly that with prayer, God will listen and aid us, albeit in his own time. All we need to do is wait patiently. I think praying fervently in Mexico was easy. Maybe it is because we think it is a special week, that one week that we pour all of our strength and energy, both physically and spiritually, into everything we do. But the hardest part, I think, is to continue to expend the same strength and energy here in Dallas, thinking that every single week is a special week for praying. I hope that every single one of us here can become a prayer warrior, someone that before all else prays first. I hope that all of us can experience the power of prayer when we pray for ourselves, for each other, and for any VIPs that we reach out to. Thank you.